Hi guys, welcome to this week's presentation. I bet you're excited. It's the last one before half term. Can you believe it? Half term already done. So we've looked at quite a few theorists, and if you need to go back and check these PowerPoints at any PowerPoint, check them again, and then really get to grips with these theorists. So this week we are looking at David Gauntlet and his theories of identity. It's not a very complicated one, this. It fits in quite nicely with the other two that we've looked at in the last 2 weeks. So the feminism stuff, Bell Hooks and Libet van Zunen, and also last week with Paul Gilroy, cough. So it fits in with all that quite well. It kind of repeats a lot of that stuff actually, but in a different sort of way. We'll talk it through. So there he is. There's his smiling face. He looks like a nice chap, does he not? He has two main parts to his theory. One is about self-identity, and the other is about representation. So we will talk those bits through. As I say, it's not very complicated, and as we've done other things a bit like this recently, we should be able to whiz through this one pretty quickly, and then on to the tasks, and then that's it. Yeah, so let's get into it. Here we go. So self-identity. David Guantlett, believes the media people consume reinforces something about their identity. I had to read that sentence to myself there. It sounded a bit weird. So let me say that again. David Guantlett believes the media people consumes reinforces something about their identity. So for one way, people may learn something about themselves. They may learn something about themselves from viewing something. That's interesting, isn't it? People may define themselves or others by the type of media they consume. So you might think, oh, I'm a metal fan, or I'm a fan of this type of thing, or I'm into hip hop, or I'm this type of person. I like comic books. So think for a minute about the type of media you like and what does it say about you. Are you that sort of person? I can tell you that I certainly am. I mean, when people ask me what I like, what I'm like, I often say, well, I really like horror films. I really like comic books. I'm into hip hop, that sort of stuff, into rock music. I sort of define myself through what I like. And I think it does say something a little bit about me. I mean, I'm kind of a comic book nerd. I'm that sort of person. And I sort of fit almost into well, that was a text message there. I'll turn my phone silent. I fit into a kind of type, I guess, a sort of stereotype surrounding those sort of things. And I embrace that sort of image. Um, so, is there any media as well that you have learned behaviour from? Um, so, we'll talk a little bit more about that because what do I mean by learned behaviour? So, learned behaviour. um, here's some other examples of that we look at. There's old Zoella there, her smiling face. So, she talks a lot about anxiety. She alleges she has anxieties, and that there are people who read her blogs and watch her vlogs to learn stuff about anxiety. Maybe they're suffering with anxiety too. Maybe they didn't know they had anxiety issues till they started watching Zoella and they identify with her. So stuff like that. Also in the second year, we look at that rather dated looking magazine on the right, Woman's Realm. And very similarly to Tide, there are things about how a woman should act and what a woman should be like. Um, so there we are. That's the sort of learned, talking through the learned identities. You might think this is how I should behave, or I'm learning about what it means to deal with mental health or anxiety or things like that. Then the other side is I am the media I consume, a bit like what I said about I'm a comic book nerd and all these sort of things. Here we have some rather kind of sad looking characters who are taking their passions a little too far. So we've got a comic book nerd there. We've got some white hip hop fans. Um, we have some metalheads, and there's a guy there getting a Star Wars tattoo. I'm sure he will never regret that. I'll never not like Star Wars, he's thinking. And then Disney buys Star Wars and ruins it. Haha. Um, but there you go. So that's another thing. Some people are obsessive about the media they consume. I think I'm a little obsessive about certain bits of media. But I mean, go to Comic Con. Go to Comic Con. You'll see them there, won't you? The people who define themselves through the media they consume. So that's that. That's the first part of his theory. It's basically that people can self-identify. They can identify through the media they consume. That's one thing. So yeah, think about that with the text we look at. I mean, second years specifically, this is interesting to you because of Zoella. So her fans, we're looking at this week a section about audience and how her audience connects with her. So one of the things will be with self-identity, and that's the thing with YouTubers, isn't it? They're sort of like us, but not. So that's that. We'll move on to the next section. And the next section is about representation. So David Guantlett believes there are so it should be wider. So there are far wider variety of representations available us today to identify with. In the past, representations were quite rigid and singular. This can be seen, this can be seen very clearly in representation of gender. So I have talked about gender already. It's not just about gender though, by any means. It's just an easy one to get your head around because we've been sort of talking about that before. But you can think about with ethnicity as well. We talked about Paul Gilroy. This fits very well with that. So one way in the past they would have things saying, men should act like this, women should act like this. Again, this kind of links with bell hooks theory, kind of links a bit with Paul Gilroy a little bit. So here we go, some traditional representations here of how masculinity and femininity have been sort of seen. We've got Bond there, the suave James Bond, tough and sexy. We've got the Bond girl beneath him there, so she's objectified and curvy, and women are supposed to be attractive. The housewife, what a housewife should be, in the middle there, smiling and looking after her husband. We've got some geezer lads at the bottom. They look fun, don't they? A married couple, traditional married couple there. So a kind of a range of very traditional representations. Now, Guantlett said that in the past we had these sort of rigid, singular representations of things, and it could be gender, it could be age, it could be ethnicity, it could be anything. And now we're moving into a time where there are far more varied types of representations, and that means that it's easier for different people to identify with different things. So let's have a look at some. Boom. Contemporary representations. I mean, I could have done a lot more. A little bit lazy there. We've got Ripley from Alien with a big gun. We've got another woman with a big gun, Linda Hamilton from Terminator. And there's Moz, good old Moz. So Moz is, in a way, a kind of different representation of masculinity and ethnicity, is he not? Interesting. But yeah, I can tell you a personal story about this. I mean, I remember in the sort of late 90s with the sort of rise of lad culture, geezer culture. Men were supposed to like football and drink lager and beat each other up. And it wasn't really my bag, I have to say. That wasn't really my style. I'm not even a lager drinker. I certainly don't like football. And if I could avoid a fight, I would avoid a fight. That's not me at all. And watching programmes like Hollyoaks in the late 90s, or EastEnders or anything like that, men were seen in a type of way. So like real men were, beer drinking fighters, geezers. I mean, especially in Hollyoaks. So you'd watch that and I'd be watching it thinking, well, I'm certainly not like that. That's not me. I don't act like that at all. So am I not, am I not a lad? I guess I'm not a lad, but what the heck am I? And there really wasn't very many sort of people that I could identify with in the media. Maybe Bart Simpson when I was a kid, but not very many sort of as an adult or a young adult. Certainly not like your age. I guess a few musicians, David Bowie, he was a bit more different, but he was quite, there were fewer, especially on TV in this country, very few. Now, moving to the end of the 90s, we get things like Spaced. If you haven't seen Spaced, you really need to remedy that. It's the TV show that was before Shaun of the Dead. So when Spaced came out, I was like, oh my God, that's me and my friends. Like, that's what we like. We like comic books, we like skateboarding, we like other things they do, playing video games, stuff like that they do in Spaced. Give Spaced a watch, it's very good, you'd like it. So there we go. I mean, and now, that was 20 years ago, for goodness sake. So now we have a range of different representations of all sorts of people. People are less sort of characters are less defined by their race and their what they are, their age, their race, their gender, and they can be interesting characters and a range of different characters nowadays. And I guess that makes it easier to identify with. But there's more. Yeah, I mean, I covered this. There's more than just gender, is what I meant. So here we have some other kind of characters, ethnicity. Lots of comic book stuff here. I guess I was thinking kind of comic book when I wrote it. But, Black Panther there and Miles Morales, Miss Marvel. We've got Star Trek up the top there. So all different range of kind of ethnicities. Miss Marvel, I believe, is a Muslim girl from, where is she from? I think she's from Iran, the new Miss Marvel there. Not too sure. We will see. There's a TV show coming, isn't there? So we will soon find out. I don't watch Star Trek as well, but we have ethnicity there in a major role, and not defined by ethnicity either. I should say it's not like they are. How were ethnic people represented in the past, singularly and just entirely through their ethnicity. Now, it's it just so happens that they're ethnic. It doesn't really. It's not what their character is motivated by. And at the bottom there we've got Oracle. So she was quite a cool character in the comics. I think late 80s, 90s. It's Batgirl. Batgirl after she gets her back broken. So she's in a wheelchair. So it's a disability, a different representation of disability there. I guess you see the same with Professor X, and there might be others. So a range of representations, much wider range, and if you combine that with his first point about self-representation, self-identity, I should say, we get, more representations to self-identify with. So that's good. So how to use this? Well, what you're going to do is you've got to look at a text and you've got to think how could the audience identify or learn something from this media text? Could they identify with this text? So you've got to, when you look at a text, think what could the audience potentially learn about themselves, or how could they identify with this text? So some examples that we'll be looking at soon, or we are looking at now, is formation. Think about how young women might watch Formation and identify with Beyonce as a strong role model. Maybe ethnicity, look at Beyonce and see her challenging some of the stereotypes towards ethnicity, or things like that. Zoella the same. So maybe her fans are looking at her and identifying with her as a young female. Maybe they're looking at her and learning about anxieties, things like that. It's very possible. It's very possible. And then also, are the representations that they're showing? Are they showing a variety, more of a variety than in the past? Are they doing something new with the representation? Can you argue that this shows a change in the representation that we have in the past? So very similarly, I guess, in a way to bell hooks that theory. So in the second year, we look at Attitude magazine. We'll be looking at that fairly soon. Attitude magazine, which is I guess a predominantly a gay magazine, and it has a range of different representations of gender in it. We look at Kiss the Vampire in the first year, which is a vampire film poster, and it has very mild different representations of gender. There's a sort of strong vampire female in it, but also Assassin's Creed in the first year is both ethnicities represented and gender. We have we have a female protagonist in a video game, by no means the first, but maybe the first in the Assassin's Creed franchise, and she is of ethnic background. She has an ethnic background. I said that twice. I don't know again if that's the first for a video game, but the exam board would have you believe it's the first. So we look at them, and you could say that it's changing representations there, and it's quite a radical thing in many ways. So there you go. I hope you understood that. It's not too complicated. You just need to have a rough understanding about this and be able to drop his name in the relevant places when you write exam answers. We'll get plenty of practice doing that. So please turn to the worksheet and complete this week's tasks. If you're in the first year or the second year, you have a different worksheet each with different tasks to complete on them. And there's a picture of the Beastie Boys. I figured I gave you a picture of Easy last week, so here's the Beastie Boys. And they challenge representations in many, many ways. I mean, first of all, they're a white hip hop band, and they were actually good. So that was challenging and different. And also, they are sort of they challenge what hip hop was entirely about. So they're not well, apart maybe the first album was a little bit normal, but very soon after the first album, they stopped sort of singing about misogynistic things and sort of girls and guns and beer and stuff like that, and all the kind of things that hip hop acts tend to rap about, and they sort of rap about comic books and all sorts of things, throwing eggs at people, range of stuff really. Funny lyrics. They're kind of comical. They were fun. Also, they're Jewish, so that's a kind of changed representation. You don't often think of Jewish rappers. That's quite different. So if you haven't listened to the Beastie Boys and you like hip hop music, give it a go. If you don't like hip hop music, give it a go anyway. Um, and thanks for watching, and see you in class. Have a good week, guys. I hope this has been useful to you. Give it a watch again if you don't understand anything, and you can always rewatch the other theorists. We've covered quite a few now, haven't we? What have we got? We've got Steve Neal, Under the Bag. We've done him. Steve Neal, Genre Theory. We've done Roland Barthes, Semiotics. That was done. We've done Liebert van Zunen and bell hooks. We've done Stuart Hall, Reception Theory. We've done Paul Gilroy, Ethnicity. And now we've done David Guantlett, 7 theorists. Bang. Excellent. Well done. I hope you feel proud. Anyway, see you in class. Thanks a lot. Bye.